Welcome to the 2022 General Election Judge Training, presented by the Illinois State Board of Elections. Our cybersecurity team has put together some basic tips to keep our elections safe and secure. Tip 1. Exercise normal caution. If something seems suspicious, you should contact your election authority's office. If a voting machine is not working properly, make sure there is nothing suspiciously wrong with it before you assume it is just a faulty machine. Tip 2. Make sure to always have paper backups. Check that there are enough physical ballots before the polling place opens. Make sure that your voters trust that their vote was counted and that it was for the candidate that they actually voted for. Tip 3. Be confident in your training as an election judge. Know your opening procedures, during the day procedures, and closing procedures. Make sure you know how to work the voting machines and are aware on who to contact should the machine malfunction. Bad actors may try and manipulate you, but this is much harder to do when you are confident about your training and knowledge you have received. Tip 4. Monitor time spent in the voting booths. A voter probably will not take more than 10 minutes in the voting booth. If you believe they are taking longer than normal, check in with the voter to see if they need help with anything. Tip 5. Be aware of physical devices in the polling place. If you see something suspicious being brought into the polling place or voting booth, i.e., USB drive, laptops, wire cutters, screwdrivers, contact your election authority. If someone shows up claiming to repair or inspect a voting machine or other equipment in the polling place, make sure you clear this with your election authority before letting the individual proceed. Here are some time frames prior to Election Day. Early voting starts September 29th and continues through the day before the election. Vote by mail starts September 29th and continues through November 3rd. Grace period registration and voting begins October 12th and continues through Election Day. The close of regular registration is on October 11th, and online registration closes on October 23rd. When you arrive at the polling place, you want to set up the voting area to allow for an orderly flow of voter traffic in the polling place. Please make sure the booths are at least 6 feet apart and sanitize anything that you may think needs to be wiped down. Please remember that tabulators must be in full view of the judges at all times. Please arrive at your polling place at the designated time. This is around 5 a.m. for most jurisdictions. If any of the judges do not show up, give them around 15 to 20 minutes, then try to get a hold of them. If you are unsuccessful, call your election authority. If your election authority cannot find a replacement judge, you as an election judge are allowed to swear in another judge after 6:15 a.m. They must be of the same political affiliation as the missing judge. Check supplies and make sure nothing is missing. Make sure you have enough pens to replace them as voters use them, or that you have enough sanitation wipes to wipe them down each time, and enough ballot covers or folders. Hand sanitizer and tape to mark off 6 feet of space for voters in line, and other safety and sanitation protocols deemed necessary by the State of Illinois Department of Public Health and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Set up the voting area, and as always, please call your election authority if you discover any problems or have any questions. Stay organized throughout the day. Match your supplies to the checklist in your supply kit. If anything is missing, call your election authority. Most election authorities will have separate binders or folders with before polls open supplies, during voting hours supplies, after polls close supplies, and provisional supplies. Make sure to keep the supplies in order. As election judges, you are officers of the Circuit Court. It is your job to uphold the United States and the Illinois Constitution. You are the sole authority over the polling place. You are the sole authority over the campaign-free zone, the sole authority over poll watchers, and you are responsible for the proper conduct of the election. Remember to rotate positions. It reduces fraud, and it is law. You act as a board, and a majority rules. All judges have equal authority, as there is no head judge, no matter if this is your first time serving or you are a veteran election judge. Remember, though, if you are encountering a situation and you are unsure of what to do or the proper way it should be handled, please contact your election authority for guidance. It is critical that we make sure the voter is given the correct ballot sheet. Check that the date and precinct designation on the ballot sheet are correct. Ballot sheets are designated by code and number. The ballot sheet code or number should match what's on the voter's application. The code or number can be found on the voter's application or in the electronic poll book and will match the code or number on the top of the ballot. Additional ballot styles are added in precincts in which all voters do not vote for the same offices or propositions. It is very important that the voter is given the correct ballot sheet. Compare each ballot style to each specimen ballot to verify that the following is listed correctly: each office, the vote for on each office, and each candidate. If all of this is correct, all the judges will sign the certificate of inspection. When the tabulator is turned on and the zero tape prints, you will need to conduct the same inspection with the zero tape against the specimen ballot. The certificate of inspection is signed to indicate that the ballots, the specimen ballots, and the tabulator tapes have all been inspected and proofed. By signing the certificate, you are indicating that you have received the proper number of ballots. Completing the certificate of inspection will also help you complete your statement of ballots, which is taken care of at the end of the night. A list of write-in candidates will be provided to you in your precinct kit. There will only be valid write-in candidates on this list, which are candidates who filed the appropriate declaration of intent to be a write-in candidate 61 days prior to Election Day. This list should not be posted anywhere in the polling place. However, this list can be shown to a voter if they have requested to see it. Before the polls open, you will need to hang signs. The polling place entrance sign and ADA compliance sign will need to be hung. They should clearly identify the entrance. Remember, the ADA entrance may not be the same as the main entrance, and the ADA sign will need to be placed on the correct entrance. The polling place roadway sign will also need to be placed and should clearly identify the public roadway entrance nearest the polling place. Please remember to post instructions on how to properly darken the oval and how to cast a write-in vote in the voting booths and around the polling place. All other notices only have to be posted in a predominant location in the polling place. Also post the 6 feet apart notice, the face coverings required notice, and any other notice recommended by the Illinois Department of Public Health and the Centers for Disease Control around the polling place. Who else may be present in the polls on Election Day? Law enforcement officials, representatives of the Attorney General, the state's attorney, your election authority, the State Board of Elections, and qualified poll watchers with proper credentials. Poll watchers are the only ones who must provide written poll watcher credentials to election judges at the polls on Election Day. Even though poll watchers are the only visitors in the polling place who must surrender an official credential, all other visitors are still required to show their official ID or credentials to the election judges to confirm they are eligible to be present in the polling place. Poll watcher qualifications. First, the poll watcher must be registered to vote in Illinois. Poll watchers do not have to be from the precinct in which they are poll watching. They just have to be registered Illinois voters. They must have credentials issued by either the State Board of Elections or your election authority. They must have separate credentials for each precinct they enter, even if there are 2 precincts in one polling place. Poll watchers can be appointed by any of the following entities: candidates, political parties, qualified civic organizations, state civic organizations, or proponents or opponents to a proposition. Candidates can also be poll watchers. Candidates will have a candidate credential rather than a poll watcher credential and must also surrender that to the election judges. Poll watcher credentials are collected when they first enter the polling place, and you are to keep them. Poll watchers must utilize a sign-in and sign-out sheet when they are coming and going throughout the day. Some jurisdictions have a separate envelope for poll watcher credentials, and the reverse side of this envelope is utilized as the sign-in and sign-out sheet. You'll return the credentials to the election authority at the end of the day. Poll watcher rights. Poll watchers may observe all proceedings and records relating to the conduct of the election, but they cannot touch or handle any of the material. They may come and go throughout the day as long as their behavior is not disruptive. They can call attention to incorrect procedures, and they may challenge the qualifications of a voter. Poll watchers can be in the polling place before the polls open to observe any opening procedures, including the inspection of the ballot box to ensure that the compartments are empty. They can be in the polling place during the actual voting hours, as well as after the polls close to observe any of your after the polls close duties. Anytime that you are in the polling place on Election Day, a qualified poll watcher can be there as well. Remember that the secrecy of the ballot must always be maintained. Voters want to be able to come into their polling place, cast their ballot in private without disruption, and then leave. Poll watchers should not interfere with the voter in any way. Poll watchers are required to be placed at a station or chair at least 6 feet away from all voting booths, equipment, voters, and election judges to comply with the IDPH and CDC guidelines. The campaign-free zone consists of an area 100 horizontal feet extending from the entrance to the polling place or room. Within this zone, there can be no campaign signs, buttons, or electioneering. Electioneering is defined as working for or against the interest of a candidate, a political party, or a political proposition that is on the ballot. You should have markers or cones to designate this campaign-free zone. Churches or private schools have the option to not allow any electioneering on their property. In this instance, the markers should be placed near the boundaries of the property, adjacent to the thoroughfares or walkways leading to the entrances used by voters. If the polling place is located on a building with 2 or more floors and the polling room is located on a floor above or below the ground floor, then the markers shall be placed at a distance of 100 horizontal feet from the nearest elevator or staircase used by the voters to access the floor where the polling room is located. If the polling room is located within a private business, church, or school building, and the distance of the 100 horizontal feet ends within the interior of the building, then the markers shall be placed outside of the building at each entrance used by the voters to enter that building. Remember that you are the sole authority of the campaign-free zone, and you are responsible for enforcing the rules of the campaign-free zone. During voting hours. At 6 a.m., unlock the door and announce out loud that the polls are open. Replace missing election judges if approved by your election authority, and collect any poll watcher credentials. A list will be provided to you that indicates who has voted early, who has voted by mail, and who has utilized grace period registration and voting. If the voter is marked as already voted and claims they have not, call the election authority's office. Voters that are required to show ID before voting will somehow be flagged, notifying you that they need to show ID. People who have applied to vote by mail but have not provided an adequate proof of identification to the election authority may be required to show ID. A grace period voter may be required to show ID. Or a voter who has been challenged by a poll watcher, a voter, or an election judge may be required to show ID. what qualifies as a proper ID? A driver's license or a state ID, a utility bill, a student ID, and a piece of mail addressed to their address of residence, a government check, a paycheck, a lease or a contract for residence, a bank statement, or any other government document. Any ID that they show must show their name and address documentation that matches their records. Vote by mail. If a voter was issued a vote by mail ballot, has not voted it, and surrenders the ballot to you on Election Day, they may vote as normal. If a voter claims they never received their vote by mail ballot, they may sign an affidavit and vote on Election Day. If a voter receives a vote by mail ballot, doesn't have it with them, and cannot go to retrieve the ballot, they have to vote provisionally. Voters may be challenged by poll watchers, election judges, or another voter. Reasons for a challenge may be that a voter has moved, they have already voted, they have changed their name, there is no record for the registration, or they are not the same person as the registered voter. The voter may resolve a challenge by presenting proper identification or other documentation to show that they are eligible to cast a ballot. Remember that a voter challenge is not valid unless a majority of the election judges agree that a challenge is legitimate. Even if a challenge is upheld, the affected voter must be notified of their right to vote provisionally. Voter assistance is for voters with disabilities or voters who cannot read or write the English language. The affidavit of assisted voters must be filled out every time a voter receives assistance in the voting booth, even if election judges are providing the assistance. The affidavit must be spindled along with the voter's application. Who can give assistance? A friend, a relative, or 2 election judges, one from each political party. Who can't give assistance? A voter's employer, an agent of the voter's employer, an officer of the voters' union, or an agent of the voters' union. Intoxicated voters cannot receive assistance in the voting booths. Judges station number 1 is the application judge. The application to vote, the affidavits, demonstrator ballot sheets, and a number of pens should be placed at this station. When the voter approaches this station, greet them and ask them to announce their name and address. Confirm that the name and address match the records. Even if you know the voter, you should still have them announce their name and address so the other election judges and any poll watchers can hear it. Verify that the voter has not already voted by checking your list of those who have voted early, by mail, or through grace period voting. The voter should complete the application and sign it. Offer the voter instructions on the demonstrator ballot sheet and remind the voter to turn the ballot over to vote offices and public questions that may be on the back of the ballot. Make sure that when you are offering instructions to the voter, you are doing so on the demonstrator ballot sheet and not with the actual ballot. Announce the voter's name and address out loud and pass the application to the verification judge at Station 2. Station number 2 will have 2 verification judges, one from each political party. The scanned signatures, binder books, electronic poll books, and a listing of different ballot styles should be placed at this station. Here, you will locate the voter's verification records, compare and verify the signatures and address on the application, and make sure they match the voter's records, and determine the correct ballot style. If the ballot style is not indicated on the voter's application, make sure to do so, and initial the application. Judges Station number 3 is the ballot distribution judge. The spindles for the applications and the ballots should be placed at this station. Here, you will check the application for the judge's initials and spindle the applications and number them consecutively. The application, or the voter's roster, will indicate the proper ballot style for each voter. Use that to determine the proper ballot style for the voter. Initial the ballot sheet in red ink. Make sure to initial the ballot in the designated spot, which is usually the upper right-hand corner of the ballot. This spot is clearly designated as the spot for the judge's initials, which is important because initialing the ballot in the wrong spot can cause issues when the voter tabulates their ballot. If there are 2 different precincts in one polling place, you can use 2 different colors to initial the ballot sheets for easier separation. Provide the voter with the correct ballot. Offer a secrecy sleeve or cover and instruction reminders on voting and use of the secrecy sleeve, and direct the voter to the voting booth. Spoiled ballots are ballots on which a voter has made an error while marking. The voter should request a new ballot from the ballot distribution judge, who will write spoiled across the ballot before issuing the voter a new ballot sheet. The judge will mark the voter's application to indicate that a ballot or ballots were spoiled. Ballot envelopes will be placed in the before 7 p.m. envelope for spoiled ballots. The voter will process and tabulate the corrected ballot as normal. Provisional voting should only be used in circumstances when your election authority has approved it. However, we do have it because it reduces confrontation and corrects mistakes in the registration process. It also helps election authorities update voter records. You should use it when the judges have no record of registration and the voter refuses to register, if the voter did not provide proper ID when registering by mail and they can't provide it on election day, if the voter status has been challenged, or if their name appears on the list of people who have voted early. Provisional voting procedures are as follows. Verify the voter's name and address, fill out the application to vote, fill out the provisional voter affidavit, mark why the voter was given a provisional ballot, issue the voter a provisional ballot and envelope, and deposit the ballot and envelope into a separate securable container. Provisional ballots do not go in the tabulator. Remember to track your numbers throughout the day. Verify that the number of applications is equal to the number of ballots cast. Check your numbers every hour. If you are in balance every hour, you will be in balance when the polls close. Judges Station number 4 is the ballot box judge. Extra secrecy cover should be kept at this station. Here, you will check the ballots for the judge's initials. Voters will insert the ballot into the tabulator unless they request your assistance. Make sure to periodically check the voting booths for anything the voters may have left behind. It is important that the ballot box judge not hover too close to the tabulator, especially when the voter is inserting their ballot. Please use extra discretion if you do have to approach the voter when they are at the tabulator, whether due to the issue with the tabulator or otherwise. Voters want to leave the polling place knowing that they successfully voted for the offices and candidates of their choice in private. Please remember to maintain a distance of 6 feet from the voters at all times, but in a place where you can still view the tabulator. The tabulator will automatically identify overvoted ballots. Voters can either spoil the ballot and request a new one, or cast the ballot as is. If the power goes out or there is an issue with your tabulator, contact your election authority immediately. Then use your auxiliary emergency bin to hold the ballots until the equipment is fixed. After the polls close, insert the ballots into the tabulator. Voting should never stop. Make absolutely sure that you wait until after the polls close to open up the emergency bin to grab any ballots that were placed in there during the day. These ballots can only be tabulated after the polls are closed. Utilize gloves when you are handling these ballots. Curbside voting. The voter will notify the election authority the day before. 2 judges, one from each political party, will go out to the car and complete the voting process as if the voter was in the polling place. The voter will complete the application, the judges will do the verification, and they will deliver the ballot out with a secrecy sleeve and allow the voter to vote in secrecy. Then the 2 judges will bring the ballot back inside and insert it into the tabulator. If you have a voter who is not on your curbside voting list, but is still requesting a curbside vote, when time permits, still allow that voter, who may not be able to physically enter the polling place, the opportunity to cast their ballot. At 6:30 p.m., you will announce that the polls will close in 1/2 hour. Don't forget to vote if you have not already done so and you are working in your precinct. At 7 p.m., announce out loud that the polls are closed. All voters in line at 7 p.m. are allowed to vote. Have an election judge or a law enforcement official stand at the end of the 7 p.m. line so you know where the line ends. Close and lock all the doors and remove all polling place signs. After the polls close. Who is authorized to remain in the polls after they close? Well, basically everybody but the voter. Election judges, poll watchers, law enforcement officials, representatives of the State Board of Election, the Attorney General, the state's attorney, and your election authority. Before closing out that machine, make sure to check the emergency bin for ballots. Remove any ballots and insert into the tabulator. Open the ballot box and remove the ballots from the tabulator. Compare the number of ballots to the number of applications. The number of ballots in each type must match the same number as the number of applications for each ballot style. If the numbers do not agree, recount the ballots and check that the applications are numbered and spindled correctly. Then process the write-in votes. When processing write-in votes, ensure that the name is on the valid write-in list. Then, determine the voter's intent. The spelling of a candidate's name does not have to be exact as long as you can tell the voter's intent. The name must be printed or written on the ballot line, not stamped or stickered. The oval must also be darkened. If there is a valid write-in vote, tally it appropriately on this sheet. If there are not any valid write-in votes, write none across this sheet. Complete and sign all forms, and please leave your polling place clean and tidy. Follow your election authority's instructions on what to return to the counting center at the end of the night. Two eligible judges, one from each political party, will deliver the material directly to the election authority's office when everything is done so the election authority can close out the election. Please remember that the results on your vote total tapes are not the official precinct results, and official results may take up to 21 days.